Hello, welcome to the Comic Book Commentary. I'm Bo Leidig, and this week we're going to be talking about one of, if not my favorite book to have come out in the last 10 years, East of West #1. Let's zoom in and take a closer look. First published in March of 2013, this book has, I believe, 4 or maybe even 5 different covers. Unfortunately, this is the only cover that I have to show you today. Jonathan Hickman, writer. Nick Dragotta, artist. Frank Martin, colors. Russ Wooten, letters. We see here on the first page that the book starts out in the middle of a strange rock formation in the middle of the desert with an odd stone, I don't know if it's an altar, but some sort of geometric symbol made out of stone on the floor of the desert. On the next page, we then see a large electrical ball of energy form inside of the stone pillars, lighting up around the stone formation on the floor of the desert. And then the triangles on each one of the 4 circles on the formation light up. And we then see that out of each one of the triangles, a small childlike figure breaks free from the ground, pulling itself up, detaching what seems to be almost umbilical cord of sorts, but it's connected to their chest, not their stomach. But as we can see here, one of the triangles did not break open, and the others realize that something is wrong. We see on the next page that the 3 figures are talking amongst themselves, noting that he should be here. They don't express who. And then they get together to try and figure out by rolling who should be there with them. They realize by the things that come up that it is for certain that the 4th member of their group has left them, and they decide that settles it. They should kill him. On the next page, we see that they are alone in the desert. There's strange trails of energy smoke coming up off of their bodies. And it says that then the world can follow, meaning that after they kill the other member of their team, that they plan on killing everyone else. And that is because the 3 children that are alone in the desert are 3/4 of the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse. And the person that they're speaking of is the 4th member of the apocalypse. And this is a really weird way to start this book, I know, but trust me, it all comes together and makes sense. On the next page here, we see that it is all white with an upside down kind of Triforce looking symbol. And it says, "The things that divide us are stronger than the things that unite us." Here on the next page, we get the cool 2-page fold-out splash of just the title intro and the title of the book. This is issue #1, Out of the Wasteland. This is something that continues throughout the series, and it is such a cool idea and such a classy thing to do, of like a little precursor to the story, then you get the header, and then you're into the meat of the story, almost like a TV show, if you will, where you get a little bit of a sequence before the credits, then the credits roll, and then you're into the show. It was such a unique idea and such a nice touch. I really, really thought that this was super cool that they would take that approach to it. And my God, if anyone would ever have the guts to turn this into a full-fledged TV show, I would be so happy and so worried that they might mess it up, but I would be hopeful that they wouldn't. We are then on the next page suddenly teleported into the past, and this is where the lore of East of West begins. As we saw at the beginning, it does involve the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse. However, there is also an alternate timeline kind of going on here. Their world, as best I can tell, has the exact same history as ours up until about 1862, which is right in the middle of the Civil War. At which point it starts to diverge into its own unique timeline. As we see here, this is the prophet Elijah Longstreet, who was a soldier in the Confederate Army, but laid down his arms and became a man of God and started leading a group of followers and became a very prophetic religious leader. At the same time that that was happening, there was also the unification of all of the First Nations tribes throughout all of the America, well, maybe just the U.S. We see here that Standing Bear, who was the leader of the Lakota tribe, who was the last holdout in not wanting to join together with the other tribes, lays down his weapons at the feet of Red Cloud, who would be the first chief of what would come to be called the Endless Nation, which is the unified tribe that all of the different tribes came together under. And then they began attacking the Union Army on the Western Front, and that created a scenario where the Union was now faced with a war on two fronts, fighting the Endless Nation on the west and fighting the Confederacy at the south. This led to a stalemate, if you will, where nothing really happened for quite some time. And then there was a meteor strike that hit right about the dead center of the country. We see here that we are then moved to November 9th, 1908, where the leaders of all of the different factions in the U.S. have now come together to sign a peace treaty. This place would come to be known as Armistice. And this date is important because it is also the same date that the prophet Longstreet wrote down a prophecy of things to come, and that the chief Red Cloud told of a vision that he had in a dream, and the two of these men, upon completing the writing of a prophecy and the delivering of a vision, died at the exact same time on the exact same day. And what they spoke and wrote down would come to be known as the message. And it would be incomplete for some time because there's three parts to it, essentially, and they only delivered the first two. But as we can see here with the Golden Gate Bridge that looks slightly different, there was a lot going on at this time period, and their two parts of the message would have to be incomplete for quite some time. So here on the next page, we find out that the message went incomplete for 50 straight years until it was finished by none other than Chairman Mao Zedong, who most of you will probably recognize as the founder of the People's Republic of China in our world. However, in this world, the Soviets were driven out of China and they fled across the Pacific and founded a nation state on the west coast of America, because since the Civil War never really ended in this universe, and the Union never reunited the colonies by defeating the Confederacy, the Louisiana Purchase never happened, which led to no westward expansion, and the American government was not able to spread from coast to coast. Chairman Mao finishes the message, completes the last part of it on his deathbed, and we then find out that it is the story of the world's end. We see that Chief Red Cloud says, "Then there was a lone man, a broken sparrow." The prophet Longstreet says, "One apart, a son of night." And Chairman Mao says, "The first of four, the end of everything." This is an ominous warning. However, we're then teleported into the future where we see a lone man walking into a saloon where he is greeted by the bartender, who is very welcoming, very friendly to him. until he sees that he also has two members of the Endless Nation in tow behind him. The bar itself seems to have a real problem with any members of the Endless Nation. Racism seems to play a big role in their disdain. The bartender quickly lets the man who entered know that the people that he has in his company are not really welcome in this bar and that they will not be served. On the next page, we see the man in question state that he's only ordering drinks for himself because the wolf, who is this man, doesn't drink at all, and that the crow, who is this woman, would never drink in this establishment. The bartender reluctantly concedes, gives him his drinks, and then he toasts everyone in the bar, saying, "To the fall of empires and the illusion of republic." The soldiers seem to be getting far and more agitated by the fact that the two members of the Endless Nation are still in the bar and don't seem to be in any hurry to leave. The man in question here sets down his drink. The bartender leans over, stating that it's not just that the two Endless Nation tribal people are not served here, it's that they are flat out not welcome here. And that he's quite foolish if he and his associates stay in this bar, as it's going to be very hazardous to their health. The soldiers at this point have had enough of it and decide to walk up and confront the two members of the Endless Nation, which, of course, doesn't go well for any of the parties involved. We see in the background here on the next page that while he is still at the bar talking to the bartender, the soldiers behind him are being massacred by his two associates as he continues to finish the drinks that he ordered and continues to talk to the bartender in a rather pleasant manner, surprisingly, given what's going on behind him and what is the purpose of his visit, and tells the bartender that fear is real and that he wants him to look at him and see something worse. And as the bartender does, his memory is jogged to a point in the past where we see him standing atop this mountain with several other people, this large, almost spaceship-looking thing, and we see the man who has entered the bar is standing down on the floor of the desert, surrounded by three ominous figures. Here on the next page, we see that Wolf and Crow have killed every single one of the soldiers who were in the bar, and that the bartender is suddenly realizing who he's looking at and begins to pop open his eye patch, and his eye just completely pops out of his head, which is wild. And he almost says the name of the man he's looking at until he has a gun barrel shoved in his mouth. And then the man tells him that he should never call his name because if he does, he will surely come. Crow tells him that there's something hidden here, but he's not worried about it. He's here for information. The bartender says he'll give him anything, he'll give him what he wants, but then he's quickly reminded that he, in fact, does not have what he wants. So here on the next page, we see that the bartender, in a desperate plea for his life, tells the man that while he doesn't have exactly what he's looking for, he can give him the next best thing, which is the names of all the people who hired him. Because you see, the bartender previously was a bounty hunter. The man decides that this will work, but does berate him and asks him if he has any honor, if he, lives by some sort of a code. The bartender then tells him that he does, but at this point, he's willing to beg for his life because he wants to see another day. He'll make any bargain and quickly hands over the paper with all the names on it. This is enough for the man. He decides to allow the bartender to live, which he tells him is a rarity. And the bartender then, thanks God that he's going to see another day, puts his head down, but quickly looks up to Crow standing alone in the bar And she says that he's lucky because she would have at least taken his eyes. Crow then joins the man and wolf outside of the bar as they go over the list. She doesn't seem to recognize anyone but the first name on the list, but says that she's not walking to the White Tower. The man then tells them that he'll take care of that because the two of them would ever be able to get close to the White Tower in the first place. He walks off, tells them that they need to find out who the other names on the list are so that they can track them down, as he gets onto his weird, crazy robo-horse thing that's wild and awesome, and that he will then meet them when they're done and when he's done at the Golden Bridge. And then he rides off on his horse, and we see a view of the canyon that they were in, which shows that there's a rather incredible level of technology at play here that seems at an almost impossible level. As we will find out, this book does not take place as far into the future as you might guess. So as I stated before, we find out that the time period in which this story is supposed to be taking place is actually 2064, which is only 42 years away from when I'm recording this video. And it seems rather impossible that we would have that level of tech by that time. But again, it's an alternate reality, an alternate timeline. I'm fine with it. We're then reintroduced back to the other three horsemen, who are hard at work stacking a pile of corpses of all of these people that they've killed. And we see here that one of them, War, is stating that they don't like this part. And we then see that Famine states, what? The killing? It's great. This is what they're here to do. They love the killing. But War states that it's not the killing, it's the fact that they've had to be reborn as children and that they have to spend time in child bodies waiting for them to mature, which is a big part of this storyline that doesn't fully get explained in this issue, but it does come into play later on. On the next page, however, Conquest quickly interjects that he actually loves being a kid because it's a way for them to, I guess, get people's guards down before they just suddenly kill them. And then Famine replies, yeah, it's really funny when they reach out to hug you and then they pull back their arms and their hands have been ripped off. And then they're like, oh, where'd my hands go? Where'd my hands go? And then they state that humans are just cattle. But War then tells them that it's more so the fact that, he's upset because for 150 years, 1,500 years, I misread that, he had previously been a woman with amazing lady parts, and now he's stuck in the body of a little boy, which suggests that when they're reborn into child bodies, that they have no say in what they look like or what gender they are, and that the bodies are just random. But we then see that Conquest is not happy and doesn't want to have this argument or discussion, but then they're interrupted by the sound of one person that they didn't kill. And that person is begging them for help, and they say that they'll help him if he tells them a joke, to which he doesn't understand. And then they explain what jokes are with a knock-knock joke, and then ask again if they understand because he seems so out of it and traumatized. They explain to the man during their joke that they are in fact the four horsemen of the apocalypse, and then he interrupts saying that there's only three of them. They look at him for a moment and respond by stomping his face into the dirt and killing him because apparently they were really upset that he pointed out that the fourth member of their group isn't there, and they were going to kill him anyway. As we zoom out, we see here that they've been stacking all of these corpses into the Triforce type shape, which I can't remember if this is basically the symbol of the four horsemen of the apocalypse, but it's also the symbol of the message. There's a lot of symbolism that goes on in this book. On the next page, then, we are teleported to the White Tower, which is in the capital of the Union. Inside of the White Tower, we are transported to the office of the president, and we then see the man from the bar stroll into the president's office. And we are also shown that the president was one of the people who hired the bartender / bounty hunter to track this man down, which led to the confrontation we saw in the bartender's flashback. The president asks him how he got in there, to which he replies, "There are no doors I can't walk through, anytime he please, no place he can't reach, and no man he can't meet." The president then asks who he is. He tells him that it'll come to him, and then asks him, "Mr. President, do you believe in hell?" The president responds by telling him that there are agents right outside the door, but he is cut off when the man tells him that this isn't the way he wants to go out. Not like this. There's no bluffing, no posturing or politicking, and that at the end, he needs to accept what he's responsible for. The president says that he doesn't know what this is all about, but that they're done here. The man tells him that they are, but not in the way that the president thinks. The president tries to run out through the doorway into the hall, but is told by the man that there is no salvation out there. And he realizes when he gets out into the hallway that this is true because all of the agents who were guarding him have been killed. He looks back and the man quickly shoots him in the knee to keep him from running, blowing his leg clean off. The president then lays on the floor groveling, basically asking him, who he is, what is this? The man tells him that he took something from him in the Badlands. The president then realizes who the man is and says that they killed him. But the man tells him that no, they didn't, and what they did was actually worse. The president tries to tell him that he doesn't have what the man is looking for. The man says he knows, and that's not what this is about. The president asks him what it's about then, and the man tells him it's a message, that he has been called Abaddon, the Reaper, Fool's Bane, and the Grey Walker. But he wants the president to say his real name, to which the president replies, Death, because the man is in fact Death, the fourth member of the four horsemen of the apocalypse. Death then tells him, if you find hell lonely, wait, company is coming soon, and then proceeds to unload the revolver on the president's face. The dialogue in this book is fantastic. It's such good writing. I absolutely love it. That is such a totally cold-hearted way to talk to somebody right before you kill them. On the final page of the story, we see that Death is walking down the hallway away from the corpse of the president, whose head has been completely destroyed and is nothing but a neck stump now. And it says, you wanted the end times. Well, here they are. And on the reverse inside cover, we get to see a map of America as it exists within the world of East of West. Here in Zone 1, we have the Union. Zone 2 is the Confederacy. Zone 3 is the Kingdom. Zone 4 is Armistice. Zone 5, the Burning Plain, which is this ring around Armistice. Zone 6, the Endless Nation. Zone 7, the Republic of Texas. And Zone 8, the People's Republic of America. And they make up the 7 nations of America. Now, I know you're thinking, hey, Bo, you just said that there were 8. And the reason for that is because Zone 4, Armistice, does not count as one of the nations because it is considered shared territory amongst the other 7 nations. But that's a whole lot to take in. And that was East of West number 1. And I know it's a lot to take in because this story is wild. And there is a lot that was covered in this book to try and give you some foundation of how it starts and where the lore begins, trying to get you caught up to where it's at currently. There's a lot more backstory that's explained in later issues. But trust me, this story is fantastic. East of West has so many twists and turns. It's so unique. It's such a cool idea. It's absolutely one of the best comic book series I've ever read. I've got every issue, so I promise I'm going to do videos on the whole thing. I've actually been keeping this one on the back burner for a little while. I wanted to get in a little ways before I touched on this book just because it is so intricate in its storytelling. But if you've never read East of West, I highly recommend it. It is such a fun read. It's such a good book all around. I know I'm kind of gushing, but it really is one of my favorite titles of the last decade. But these are just my opinions. You may have a different one. But if you like today's video, please feel free to like, comment, and subscribe. Thanks for watching. Have a great day.